Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Welcome back, guys. Today's topic is about basic sentence structure. Stay with me, Eric Kurniawan. Alright, let's look at some interesting pictures. So what do you see here? It's a signpost from a Chinese restaurant. What is interesting here is this message: all you can eat buffet, not mean all day buffet. You know, come stay for hour, you eat, you go. So what we can see here, this message is not something that we learn from school, right? So in school we learn that we have to construct complete sentences and grammatically correct sentences. And so even though you understand what this means, but you may say this is not totally acceptable grammatically speaking. But this is something that we may see or we often see in real life. Alright, let's see some other interesting posts. This one is something that you may see at a park. The small grasses feel ashamed to smile, please don't bother it. Okay, so grammatically speaking it's problematic, but somehow in context you see what it means. This is another one. Thanks you for come to visiting us. If you are another speaker of English, then you may find this message confusing. But if you understand some Indonesian, then you may get what it means by looking at the translation down here. Terima kasih atas kunjungan Anda. And the last one, warm tip: watch your step, fell into the water carefully. So this may be a warning. Like, you have to be careful with your steps, because otherwise you may fall into the water or something like that. But somehow grammatically speaking is problematic. So in real life we may see lots of samples of language, text or spoken language which do not adhere to the grammar, and yet at some point we understand. And so the basic question is, do we still need grammar? Alright, now let's look at some example of written language. This taken from an abstract, and this comes from a real piece of work. So if you look at this piece of abstract, you know, at glance there's nothing wrong with this, but let's look at each sentence real quick. Progress of an organization will not be separated from the existence and influence of human resources in it. Yeah, we can still grasp what it is. Human resources become the main motor of the organization in carrying out all its activities in an effort to achieve the goal. It still makes some sense. Within the organization, man is one of the most important elements. Okay, even though there is some problem with orthography. Without human roles, even when various factors are needed, the organization will not work. Okay, because man is the driving and determining the way an organization. And we now run into a problem here. What it means. One of the factors that influence the success rate of an organization is employee performance. So and so on and so forth. So this a piece of text that you may find in real lives, even in your surroundings. If you go to our library and check out the samples of abstracts from thesis or dissertations, this is something that you will commonly see. Lots of problems in grammar, and yet is considered final, and people may not object to this kind of language. Alright, so one of the the goals of what we are learning is for you to master, to understand, to acquire, to have a strong grasp of the so-called standard English, the kind of English that is standard across the globe. Wherever you go, whenever you use this type of English, people will understand what you mean. Okay. So let's look at some examples. This research is qualitative in nature. Is it standard? Do you think? If you look simply at the sentence structure, this looks okay. This research subject, right? And then we see a verb, we see an adjective, and it's okay. And yet this sentence starts with a small cap, and it's not right. So in orthography or in writing, you have to start your sentence with a capital letter, right? Number 2, and another goal of this research to probe which hypothesis borne out. Sentence-wise, this looks okay. We can understand what it means, and the subject is there, the verb is also there, the predicate or the rest of the sentence is also there, and yet the sentence starts with a conjunction, which is not acceptable, right? You cannot start a sentence with a conjunction. And then interviewing informants was done in this research. If you understand this sentence from the standpoint of Indonesian, it is understandable. Wawancara informan dilakukan dalam penelitian ini. But if you want to rewrite or restate this in a proper English, then you have to restructure this. For example, informants were interviewed in this research, something like that. The findings were shown that Kurniawan's 2018 hypothesis can be extended to this data. So this is problematic because if you see this construction, the findings were shown, maybe there is some influence from bahasa Indonesia. Ditunjukkan bahwa, but the standard one in Indonesian is also temuan ini menunjukkan bahwa, so not passive but active. So the correct one could be the findings show that blah 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 blah. Okay. Moving on, in this research was used a content analysis. This also problematic in terms of word order. If you want to fix it, one way is by rearranging the order. Content analysis was used in this research, for example. And you can feel some interference from Indonesian in number 5. Dalam penelitian ini digunakan analisa konten. Sounds very Indonesian, right? And the last one, the present research purpose is to dismantle the ideology behind milk products advertisement. Penelitian ini bertujuan. So somehow the word tujuan or bertujuan is a verb in English, but in Indonesian, but it's not the case in English. So purpose is a noun, and so you cannot use it as a verb. One way of correcting this is the purpose of the present research is to blah, blah, blah. And last one, I guess, afterwards was informed to informants. There is some influence from bahasa Indonesia. Selanjutnya diinformasikan kepada partisipan. So there is a missing subject here. If you want to correct this afterwards, for example, the consent was informed or the instrument was informed to the participant. Alright, let's go back to the abstract that we saw earlier, and I would like you to focus on these 3 pieces of sentences which are interesting. Number 1, because man is the driving and determining the way an organization. So we see a sentence that starts with a conjunction, right, which is problematic. But aside from that issue, this sentence has the subject man, the verb, and so somehow in that aspect the sentence is complete. Number 2, efforts to improve employee performance, among others to pay attention to job stress and workload. So again, here we see some potential subject here, and then the verb. but this is not a standard construction or acceptable sentence structure in English. And last one, then an analysis of the data obtained by using multiple linear analysis. We see a potential subject here analysis of the data, but there is a missing auxiliary here, and analysis of the data, for example, was done by using blah blah blah. Okay. All right. Now, in trying to understand where this problem comes from, we can actually compare the English version and the Indonesian version. You can better understand why this author phrase what he or she wants to say this way. So, karena manusia merupakan penggerak dan penentu jalannya suatu organisasi. By looking at the Indonesian, we now understand what this English version is trying to say. So you can have a better version, or by restructuring this sentence. Number one. Number two, efforts to improve blah blah blah. So if you compare the English and the Indonesian version, the Indonesian one is easy to understand, usaha untuk meningkatkan kinerja karyawan, di antaranya adalah dengan. So we may see some parallel, right? What we see in the English version is like the mirror image of what we see in the Indonesian version. So most probably the author of this abstract, had something in mind in Bahasa Indonesia and translate into English. And what he or she did was literal translation. And last one, then analysis of data obtained. So there's something missing here. But then if you look at the Indonesian version, kemudian lakukan analisis, right? And so since in English, in Indonesian, the verb does not need any auxiliaries. If you want to form an active verb in Bahasa Indonesia, just attach D, right? And pluskan, for example. But the same is somewhat different in English. So you can attach something like D or ED, which is rather equivalent to can, for example. But we need something that looks like D, and in the English case, we need an auxiliary. So the analysis of data was done, for example, by using multiple linear analysis. Alright, that's all for now. If you have any question, just drop a message in our WhatsApp group, or you can, write a comment in our Google Classroom. Thank you so much. We'll see you later. Bye-bye.